Well, hello and welcome. Welcome, everybody. Let's get our slides up and let's get started, shall we? Okay, so this is the year one, year two, sec one, sec two, IP, G3, G2, English and Language Arts parent subject briefing. My name is Steven Sim, and I'm happy to be here tonight to tell you about certain things which have been on my mind. So what happens is that, okay, some of you are parents and some of you are teachers, and some of you are students, which is fine. So what I want to share with you tonight is about how we can, we meaning both parents as well as mind stretcher, how we can prepare students who are in Sec 1 and Sec 2 during these first 650 days. Why 650 days? Well, that's how long a student or your child has from entering Sec 1 until they sit for the secondary 2 streaming exam. You have the child has 650 days to build this foundation for every academic choice that follows. So this is the thing which uh, it's not emphasized, and unless you keep your ear to the ground, you won't realize that it happens. But this is something which is very real. This is something which this end of year Sec 2 streaming exam, I'll talk more about it. It actually makes a big difference in what happens to your child's academic pathway later on. Who am I and how am I qualified to talk about this? Well, I used to be a HOD at a junior college. I was teaching in a JC for 12 years. Then I was a HOD at a secondary school. And I was a HOD at the secondary school and I was teaching English and literature. And then recently I've been at my stretcher for the past 16 years. So, and I've been teaching primary three students all the way to JC. So I believe that I have seen the entire range of students and what happens to them at different points in their progression. So for example, in secondary school and at the junior college, the students have to write summaries as part of their comprehension exam. And the techniques that are necessary, the techniques that are to be used for summary writing, it's not something new, but nobody tells them. And that's because the primary school teacher does not teach secondary school. So in primary school, the students learn synthesis and transformation, correct? And then after that, when they get to secondary school, there's no such S&T or synthesis and transformation component in the exam anymore. So what do most students do? Most students just say, oh, forget about it. And so all that just disappears. But because I've been through, and we have many teachers at my stretcher who taught at secondary school and then they were deployed to teach primary school, we can see that actually the S&T techniques, the synthesis and transformation techniques, which the students practice on and hone to perfection for their PSLE, that's actually the kind of sentence structure which they need to write for their summary writing and for their essays in secondary school. So only somebody who has bridged the gap between primary and secondary will be able to tell you that, and will be able to tell the students, hey, you know what you learn in primary school, right? This particular technique, let's do it over here when you're doing your summary writing, and we build that into our worksheets. So that's one of those kind of things which, unless you are in the know, you just think that, you know, your primary school English, you scored, maybe the child scored top marks for it, AL1. So that's it. They don't need, and you have children telling you, I don't want tuition anymore. So that's number one. Or number two, you hear parents saying, well, give them a break after the PSLE, right? And then, but I'll monitor and then I'll see what happens. I will see what happens. And then if they are a bit shaky, then okay, then maybe we start the extra lessons for them later on. So these are very common things. I've seen this for the past 16 years, right? The parents who come tell me this, and then I have students who tell me that. And then I have students who say, oh, what my stretcher teaches is not the same as my school curriculum, so it doesn't fit, so I don't want tuition. So don't believe them. Don't believe them, okay? So you need to understand that what we are doing at Sec 1 and Sec 2 is we are building a foundation. Okay, so all this hard work which went into studying and doing very well for the PSLE, it shouldn't be all these notes, all these skills that have been built up, they shouldn't be thrown away. I have students, I ask them, so where are your notes? They say, oh, they sheepishly admit that they threw away those things. They threw away the notes. And that's wrong because it's English, and so English is relevant all the time, all the way till you're 84 years old. So the kind of skill, that focus, that persistence, that determination, it's not something that should be allowed to just rot and say, okay, after the PSLE, I reward my child by allowing the child to just rot. That's That's not real education. That's mugging for an exam. Real education is a constant step-by-step process of developing the child's proficiency in the English language, isn't it? And helping the child so that they are able to deal with the next set of challenges. Because as you know, the demands are ever increasing. So the O levels definitely more difficult than the PSLE. And then some students in IP, they say, but I'm in IP stream. I don't need to take the O levels. So what happens for the A levels? What happens for the IB? So you need to write a 5,000 word dissertation. Who's going to help you write that? How do you write that? How do you structure your thoughts? In PSLE, what you learn for compo writing was telling stories. If you're going to write a 5,000 word piece for IB, it's not telling stories, isn't it? It's logical thinking, organization, making sure there's an introduction where you provide an overview, a summary, and you have to use various techniques to show cause and effect, compare and contrast, examine the sequence of events, point out critical points. So these are all higher thinking skills. You never encounter the PSLE again. So it's very good. I congratulate you. You got high marks for your PSLE, but you are not taking the PSLE again. Secondary school English is a different subject. It's not just harder primary English. The first thing that students will have to deal with is literature. And this comes in different formats. So some schools, they just have it as pure literature. Okay. And then they have English language. Then other schools, IP schools, they might have it merged as one subject, English and language arts. Okay. And then a third model might just be language arts. Okay, all in one, everything all together. Sometimes I think that when you put everything all together, it's because they don't actually have enough trained teachers. I'm not saying that they're not trained. I'm saying that the teachers did not take literature as a subject at university. So they might have been trained to teach literature in NIE. And then what happened is that if you look back at their academic records, the last time they took literature was at Sec 2. And so now they are deployed to teach students at Sec 1 or Sec 2 literature, which is a problem. You should ideally be at least 2 grades or 3 grades or 3 steps ahead of the students, right? So, so what happens with many students when they go to secondary school and they encounter literature that is being taught by some teacher who does not love literature, who doesn't feel confident in literature, is that they will end up telling you, I hate literature. This is very common. Very common. They'll tell you, I hate literature. I do badly in it. I don't understand what it is. I don't understand why I'm not doing well. I'm trying very hard, and they are. It's just that something is not happening. Something is not happening. They think that they are doing something good, but something isn't happening. Let me show you a sample, okay? You where am I? Yeah, let me see if I can show you this. Let me show you a sample of our worksheet. Okay. So can you see my worksheets? Okay, so this is something which we just did, I think last week, week 10 for Sec 1 English and Language Arts program over at My Stretcher. So many parents or many students and even the teachers, they might think, if you're not really trained in literature, you might think that it's a kind of comprehension passage. Because you read the passage, they give you a passage, and then after that, okay, they ask questions. Okay, but let's take a look at the question. What kind of question you have to deal with when it's literature? The word cadaverous, question one, is repeatedly used to describe Uriah Heep's face. What does this tell you about his appearance? What does it tell me about his appearance? Okay, so number one, I don't understand what cadaverous means. Okay, number two, I understand what cadaverous means because it sounds like cadaver. And because of my vocab, you need to build up that vocab bank, right? Because of your vocab, luckily enough, you understand that cadaver refers to a dead body. And so dead body used repeatedly. What does this tell me about his appearance? It tells me that his face is probably rather frightening or expressionless or lifeless. Okay, so that's inferential. So the use of a word to suggest something. How about question two? And the face came out. This is unusual because normally you say that the person came out. When the door opened, Uriah came out. But this is the door opened and the face came out. What does this phrase tell you about? So as you can see, it's very different from your primary school comprehension. The word grain, question three, is not commonly used. What does this word convey about his face? Question mark. Why did the narrator describe Uriah's eyes as unsheltered and unshaded? What descriptions further convey the idea of cadaverous? Ah, this one we know because we understood cadaverous. So I look for other words linked to cadaverous, perhaps words like skeleton hand. Ah, okay, right? Maybe because it's bony, like a skeleton, like a cadaver. Okay, I can answer this. So these are literature questions, very difficult to unpack unless you have somebody who shows you. So if you have somebody who knows how to teach, and we have the material here at My Stretcher, and our teachers know how to teach, then we can share with your child that love of books, of literature, of how the words work, right? Because if you don't have it, then you struggle. Your first experience with it is failure. Fail, 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 fail. And then for most students, their thinking is not, I will try harder. For most students, when they encounter failure or this insurmountable kind of obstacle, their thinking is that literature is difficult, literature is unfair because I am a good student. So they can't they can't come up with a way to rationalize or to explain to themselves why, if they are good and if they're hardworking, they are still failing. So their natural way of protecting their ego and self-esteem is to say literature is a bad subject, or the teacher is bad, or I hate literature, and that's it. So instead of saying, or instead of discovering, how about that? Instead of discovering that there are certain methods, there are certain ways of approaching the text. So how about a normal comprehension? This is a normal comprehension passage. Okay, this is a normal comprehension passage, something like this. I'll give you maybe 30 seconds to look at this. So a normal comprehension passage like this, you realize it's not very difficult. This is just about any kind of a novel. That is not a very complex novel. But you'll be surprised how, when it comes to delivering an answer, it's very difficult for students to score. So, for example, a question like this: find three details from paragraph one which the writer has used to create a foreboding atmosphere. So, in the first place, vocab becomes the limitation. I don't know what is foreboding. I don't know what is atmosphere, because atmosphere is a specific literary term. It's got nothing to do with temperature, the mist, the fog. It's got nothing to do with geography. It's got nothing to do with geography. So atmosphere or mood. Oh, so these are very specific literary terms. So how? So what are the details? So this is the simplified version. This is the sec one. So when I said this, I said these are sec one students. So we just give them the simplified question. Just list the three details, because the actual O-level question says which the writer has used, and then it goes and explain how the writer uses the details to create a foreboding atmosphere. So I tell you, for most students in Singapore, this question, most students will score 0. They just give up, because the skills that are needed to do well, and this is the main English language comprehension question, the skills which are needed to do well for this paper, the narrative comprehension, it's linked to the skills needed to do well for literature. So what happened when I was I was teaching literature in a JC, what we discovered is that there are fewer and fewer schools in Singapore which were offering literature at the O levels. Most principals would offer geography, but not literature. So even if you wanted to take literature, you wouldn't be able to do so. You only take it until Sec 2, because that's MOE's ruling. You have to take it until Sec 2. And then beyond that, no. Why? Why get students to take geography or history instead of literature? Because the principals discovered through analyzing the data that it was easier for students to score better grades if they took geography or history. Literature is difficult. And so after a while, what happened was that MOE changed the exam format. We didn't used to have this kind of comprehension B. We didn't used to have this. This only came in 2010. So before 2010, so I don't know about you, about whether you are old enough to have taken this exam or whether you're so young. Okay, you've taken this exam before, but this comprehension B, where the questions are actually just like literature questions, this only came out after 2010, which means that the students cannot run away from literature. Even if they don't offer literature, the literary questions are baked into the English language exam. Do you understand? The what does the phrase tell you about the nature of the sea? If you look at this question, they already say, how am I supposed to answer this? So these types of questions, they are baked into the English language exam. It's not the PSLE comprehension. Okay? Have I made my point? So it's not actually the PSLE comprehension. It's not the same. So literature is this new challenge. It's one of these new things which the students have to deal with. Okay, because it's about how something is written, not just what does it mean. So whether you take literature or language arts or literary analysis, it doesn't matter. The skills involved are the same, which is why I tell you that if your child tells you, oh, my stretches curriculum is different from what my school is teaching, that is just on the surface. Underneath it, you have grammar, vocab, and then how to write about how language works. That is the thing. The external thing is just branding, language arts, literary analysis, literature, but the core skills are similar. In fact, they are the same. Okay. So you have literature questions in disguise for the O-level questions. And what happens at the IP schools? Well, the assumption of the IP teachers is that you're already very good. And so, come on, answer these questions. And that is a problem because I've taught girls from Nanyang, girls, I've taught students from Hwa Chong. It's the same thing. This assumption that since you're already in the IP school, you're already very good. And so, come on, answer the questions. And some students, the exceptions, they can. And you know, because when I go to class and I teach, they're really very excited. Whenever it comes to comprehension, they are lost in a different world. They're reading and they're recreating the images and the story inside their head. Fantastic. But such students are very difficult to come by, few and in between. So I seldom have such students. Most students struggle with literature for sure. So I know that this is one of the things that actually drag down their overall score. So what do we need at the secondary school level? Well, they need to be able to read and to view the text critically. Critically meaning there must be an analysis of what has been implied. And then after that, they need to select. So one of the automatic defenses, should I say, when students are asked to find three details, is that their interpretation of that is, I'm going to copy the entire chunk two sentences, three sentences, because somewhere in there, I know there is a detail there. And they are right because the detail is in there, but they are also wrong because they have copied too many words. Because when they say provide three details, what is the meaning of the word detail? Detail is a tiny thing. A detail is a small thing. A detail is not a large thing. So what we do at MindStretcher is we tell students select as few words as necessary, not a word more and not a word less. And sometimes it's just two words. Sometimes it's four. But if you're going to choose four words or if you're going to choose five words, then make sure that every single word which you have chosen serves a deliberate function. It's intentional. You know why you chose those four words. Not because I feel unsure, so I just copy the entire chunk and I let the examiner read and then he will give me marks. You understand? So the kind of skill that's being assessed, this ability to understand and to select carefully what exactly contributes towards the creation of the atmosphere. It's these three words: the dark, gloomy cliffs. Oh, the dark, gloomy cliffs. Yeah, that's it. What if I had selected it was dark, gloomy? Huh? Dark, gloomy? What does that mean? What if I just said dark? Dark what? To feel, right? How about uh, a series of dark, gloomy cliffs? Why do you need a series? Dark, gloomy cliffs. So that's exactly. So that is a skill which needs to be practiced. So I tell you, and you understand the principle, and then it comes down to practice and practice and practice across different passages, but you are practicing the same skill. And then you build up that skill, you build up that ability. Okay. What other challenges will the students face? They will need to have presentation skills. Okay. So if you are in an IP school, if you're an IB, you'll be involved in project work. The teacher might say something like, okay, go off and in your groups, do research and and come up with a presentation on the philosophy of dance. So they have to, and then they have to present, they have to write, they have to create PowerPoint slides and do a presentation. Okay, so that's what some schools do, some IP schools, they do this kind of, you know, thing for, and that's language arts. What about your other subjects, right? So for your other subjects, for history, for social studies, you need to have presentation skills. Definitely when you get to a junior college, when you go to a polytechnic, you need to be able to work in groups, and then you need to have the gumption to stand up in front of a panel and then to present your ideas, isn't it? Because that's what happens in real life. So this education that we go through is actually preparation. It's equipping our children, equipping the students with the skills that they have, with the skills that they need so that they can succeed later on in their careers, whether it's academic or commercial, right? So this is important. And the secondary school presentation, the oral exam, is different from the primary school. What happens in primary school was that they read, isn't it? So they read, there's a visual, and then after that, there's SBC, they have stimulus-based conversation. At a secondary school, it's different. Okay, it's a different game. So this oral exam requires you to speak for 2 minutes. So you watch a video, and based on that, they give you a prompt, and then you're supposed to speak for 2 minutes. Nobody is going to ask you questions. Most students stop. I've been training the students, right? Sec 1, Sec 2. And most students, if they have not been given any guidance, they run out of things to say within 1 minute, and then they wait for the examiner to help them. The examiner isn't going to help them for this segment because it's 2 minutes. You're just supposed to talk on your own. No prompting. The prompt is a written thing. And of course, the students have time to prepare. They have 10 minutes to write something. So this is something which the students coming into Sec 1, they've never practiced before in their life, right? So this stand, they don't actually have to stand, they just sit down. But perhaps in our master speakers, we actually get them to stand and you can see that they're very confident. So our master speakers program is also an alternative way of developing this confidence. I'll say that it's actually confidence. We don't want we don't need to have our children or students to become MCs. Not everybody becomes a Toastmaster. Not everybody becomes uh, Channel News Asia presenter, isn't it? But we do want them to feel comfortable and confident in expressing their ideas. We don't want them to feel frustrated because they're frightened of speaking up. So that's what we don't want to do. But we are very clear that we want and that we give them a scaffold, we give them a structure, and we expose them gradually and we encourage them so that when it comes time to speak, to stand and deliver, they can do so. And that's our approach. So we don't force people to do things, but we help them to do this. And it's built into our weekly program. So they need to be able to speak, they need to be able to present, they need to be able to generate the ideas, to organize the ideas. This is not something which the P6s can do automatically. They need to be able to present confidently in an organized way, not automatic. There's a gap, isn't it? You can see clearly that there's a gap. So this other thing that we have here is about perceiving those things that are invisible. These things about purpose, the intention, the effect, and the audience. This is something which is tested in the visual texts, right? And that's why, and one of the reasons why MOE came up with this exam, why with this particular exam format called the visual text comprehension, which the students have done in primary school also. It's this idea that with the rise of social media, we need to have people, we need to install filters. We need to install this ability to examine what we consume. We don't just look at an image and say, ha ha ha, wow, it's amazing. There's so much snow in Kamchatka in Russia that the snow is higher than the buildings. Rather, we look at it and then we think critically, what's the source of this? Look for discrepancies. Are the buildings crooked? Could it be an AI generated video? Right? So this is what is being tested. But that's just the test. So in between these 4 years, you actually need to train the students, allow your child to be trained so that every time we do an exercise, the teacher asks them, what's the purpose of this? What's the intention of the writer? What is the effect of selecting this image? Who do you think this advertisement is targeted at? Who is the intended audience? So these these are the new categories. These are the new types of questions that are being asked of the students. So they need to be able to listen and view critically. They need to evaluate, and then they compare and contrast. They monitor their own thinking. They learn how to do note taking as part of the listening comprehension exam. So in the PSLE, all the passages are repeated twice. For the O levels and also in real life, if you go to a junior college or at a university, when you're in the lecture theater, the person speaks once and then that's it. If you miss it because you were dreaming, then your notes are blank. You don't have anything. Or worse still, you wrote down the wrong thing. And if you write down the wrong thing, then later on when you go back home and you try to study, or if you don't revise your work, last minute revision, 1 month before the exam, you say, okay, now I'm going to study very hard, just like what I did for the PSLE. You look at your notes and you get very confused because you took down the wrong information. So it's not the same as the PSL. You can't actually mug for it in 3 months or so. It's something which needs to be built up over time, right? So this listening comprehension, which many students like because they think that it is easy, I challenge you to go to any forum, online forum, Reddit, SG exams, and look at what the students say after every single oral exam. You'll see them being very disheartened, being very upset because they'll say, number one, the speakers spoke so quickly, they sounded like rappers. Why? Oh, because the schools didn't give them much practice. At My Stretcher, we give your child lots of practice in listening comprehension. Number two, the speakers were speaking in accents. And problem is they are not used to listening to English with accents. But at My Stretcher, we deliberately have speakers with Australian accents, British accents, American accents. So when you are exposed to it and you get used to it, it's no big deal. But if the only time you ever come across something like a British accent or an Australian accent is during the actual exam, most students can't take it and they lose lots of marks. So it's not as easy as it seems to be because I mean what they think of when they think about it being easy is that they don't have to write for 1 hour. They don't have to write an essay for an hour. Or they just need to fill in certain blanks or they just need to tick. But consistently over time, we find that without practice, they can't do well in it. Listening comprehension is one of the things where if you have enough practice, you get used to the accent, you get used to the speed of the utterances, and you get used to maintaining that mental focus, not allowing your mind to drift, then you can do well. And that takes practice. You know how to do it, but you need to practice it until you can do it, right? So knowing how to do it, focus is different from being able to focus. Am I right? So at IP, they might talk about visual symbols. Okay, red being more fiery, boldness, and things like that. White meaning being associated with purity, things like that. Okay, so that's about the difference between the visual text and the visual semiotics, which are very fancy sounding, but it just means the extra layer of meaning which has been added on to certain logos or shapes or colors. Okay, so there's this element of interpretation of visual stimulus. Another challenge which students face at secondary school level is that they have to write essays. It's not just a composition. So by now, all the primary school students, ex-primary school students, shall we say, are experts at writing compositions. They just memorize certain storylines and then they write something simple. Yay, full marks. And and the dirty little secret, of course, is that for some of them, they only know how to write four compos. All the way from primary four to primary six, they just memorize four compos. Number one, going up on stage, overcoming stage fright. Okay. And then after that, I saw somebody, it was my parent, it was my best friend, or it was my teacher waving to me. And so after that, my heart stopped beating and thumping, and then I regained my confidence. Okay. Number two, number two, I was having a test in an exam, and I saw somebody copying. I didn't know whether I should tell on him. Should I inform the invigilator or not? Okay. Number three, friendship, the meaning of real friendship. Okay, I was alone during the recess, and then somebody came to me, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Fourth one, overcoming an obstacle. Okay, so I went on a camp. I went on an excursion. We got lost, or we got wet, or we had to climb up a small hill. Blah blah blah. We didn't give up, and therefore I learned the value of resilience. So we have learned these four compos, and we specialize in writing this form of compose, and then whichever question came out for the PSLE, hey, somehow it fit. Okay, and then I dump it there, I get high marks, and then I think that I'm an expert at writing. And the student is an expert at writing compositions, storytelling, meaning that it's organized according to time, but it's not organized according to ideas. It's not organized according to cause and effect. It's not organized according to compare and contrast, definition, a claim followed by a description. So these are the new things which they need to learn. It's not the same as compo writing in primary school. Essay writing is a whole new set of skills which have to be taught, which have to be acquired, which have to be practiced. And I tell you frankly, I believe that the students in the mainstream schools actually benefit from the exam format of the O levels because it's very similar to what the students do at the junior college when they take GP. Because I used to be the head there. So I know. So the GP, the general paper, you write essays. There is no narrative, no personal recount. It's just argumentative essays. You write a comprehension. There's an application question. There's a summary question. So if you have been doing this all along, then when you get to junior college, you say, okay, I have written so many essays before and I know what to do. I've written so many summaries before and so I know what to do. But if you have been thinking about taking things easy, then what happens is that when you hit year five, that it's a big shock. Okay. So there is essay writing, which is very different from compo writing. There's situational writing, how to write a speech, how to write an article, how to write a proposal, very important for real life. And summary writing, again, very important. You have a long project, your boss doesn't have time. Come on, tell me in 1 minute what this new idea is all about. That's the make or break, isn't it? So that elevator pitch. So are you able to distill everything down to its core? Because if you can make a complicated idea simple, that means that you have the skill. If all you can do is just tell stories, tell stories, tell stories, your boss gets fed up. Time to listen to stories. What is the issue? That is training, the ability developed through training and practice. Okay. So to write, to represent your ideas, to develop the ideas, to do it in an organized way. So all of these things are important. So essentially, we need to have good grammar and we need to have good vocab. And we know, and although I have been saying that, okay, your child or students have been getting top grades, we know that not everybody scored AL1 for English. Isn't that true? So we know. And we have many students, when they come to us at My Stretcher in Sec 1 and in Sec 2, there's a lot of catching up. There's a lot of remedial work which the teachers have to do, because somehow these basic concepts about subject-verb agreement or tenses or punctuation for dialogue, they were not emphasized by their teachers. Even now, I have secondary one students who write sentences without full stops. I'm appalled, but I'm also used to it. So I pretend to be appalled. So, oh my goodness, how can you write a sentence without a full stop? But I've seen it so often that okay, just need to try to make an impression upon the students that it's important, right? So grammar, vocabulary. So yes, vocabulary at primary 6 level, but that's different from vocabulary that's needed for success at the O levels, at the A levels, at the university, in working life. So you acquire it as we develop. It's not something, English is not something that you study last minute. So it's not the same as English cannot study one. Rather, it's English cannot be studied at the last minute, which means that English needs to be practiced over time, right? Most secondary one students just coast and take it easy. They've survived the PSLE and they want to take a break, and maybe the parents want to give them a break, don't push them so hard. And so what happens is that by the time the weaknesses show up in the grades, right, the foundation problems have already been there. If the first year or if the first 2 years are wasted, 650 days until the end of Sec 2 where there's a streaming exam. If you don't make use of that time and it's like, oh, just before the Sec 2 exam, I send the child for tuition, it might not be enough, frankly speaking. Okay. So Sec 1 often feels fine because your child just finished PSLE, they're adjusting to a new school, they have new friends, everything is new, they're excited. Okay, then what happens? Sec 2, it's like, hey, I'm still not doing well in literature. Sec 1, I didn't do well in literature. Sec 2, I'm still not doing well in literature. My English grades are still not very good. And then suddenly, hey, my essay structure, I don't get much feedback from my teachers so far. And so you need to monitor your children, okay? You need to ask them how many essays have your teacher, how many essays does your school set you to write per term or per year? That's one of the questions you should ask the school when you have meet the teacher sessions. Go up and ask the HOD. Go and ask them and say, how many essays can I expect my child to be writing this year? Let them give you the figure and then hold them to it. If they say 4, they say 2, because we have information from students. Students will tell us, hey, my school makes me write 4 essays within 10 weeks. And then I also have students who tell us, one essay for the first half of the year and then one essay for the second half of the year. And they are being taught by the HOD, and HOD is so busy running things. So monitor what's going on. Okay. So when all these gaps occur and the test or weighted assessment marks they show some gaps, all the marks are no longer as high as you expect them to be. It's not because suddenly the English became worse. It's just that most schools design Sec 1 as a honeymoon year. They take it easy on the students, they set simpler questions, they're not very demanding. But when it comes to Sec 2, suddenly they are very demanding because there's streaming going on. So that sudden ramp up, you won't notice it. And it's not designed to be noticeable. They don't publicize this because they don't want to give stress to anybody. We just go ahead and everybody just take it easy. Okay, weighted assessments. We don't have exams. And then at the end of the year, end of year two, here are your results. And based on these results, you can take AdMeds or you're not eligible for AdMeds. You can take pure science or you're not eligible. You must take combined science. Oh, your English results and your literature results were not good. They pull down your overall score. Okay, so this is what happens to you. Now, this is something which, because I've been in the MOE system, I can tell you it happens. All schools, whether IP or mainstream schools, the streaming takes place. Okay? It is a real thing. I'm not saying this to frighten your child. I'm just saying that this is the reality. So if you're better prepared for it, then you can be happy and you can choose what you want. And if you're not prepared for it, then you don't get uh, the choice of subjects. So this foundation work in year one is very important. And this foundation work in year two is very important because you can't see the vocabulary that is being built. You can't see the grammar the grammar rules that are being reprogrammed. You only see it later during the testing. And these things take time. So this journey cannot happen at the last minute. It cannot happen and say, oh, June of Sec 2, I'll send them for tuition. It's not like that. It's not, it doesn't work like that. Okay. So at Mind Stretcher, MS, we aim to build a strong foundation. We want to stretch each student's ability. We want to enhance their general knowledge. And we want to prepare students for this Sec 2 streaming examination. Because the subjects which they are allotted for Sec 3 and Sec 4 affects which course and which subjects they can take at the JC. It affects which course they can take at a polytechnic. And the courses or the subjects which they take at JC or polytechnic affects their choices at university and beyond, isn't it? So most of the time, parents actually focus on the O levels and the A levels. But this Sec 2 streaming exam quietly determines subject combinations, which determines the JC poly options, which determines the university pathways. So just this one exam at the age of 14 shapes the options which are available at age 18 and beyond. Okay, so I think the Sec 2 exam is the one which gives me the most worry as an educator, because most of the time the students say just take it easy, Sec 1, Sec 2, because O levels 4 years away, or A levels even better still if you are the IP student. Hey, 6 years away, no exams in between. But even if you're in an IP school, they still stream you based on your ability, your demonstrated ability at the end of Sec 2. So don't After that, don't go and appeal. I want to appeal here, I want to appeal there. Come on, work for it. Earn your grades, get what you deserve. Don't just appeal. You understand? So now you know, you cannot say that I didn't know. The other thing which I need to alert you is that from 2027 onwards, which means that your children are affected. Okay, this batch is affected. The written exams will take place in September. Okay, for G2 and G3, will take place in September. What's the implication for this? So everything needs to be ready earlier because right now the O-level exams take place in October, November, but now it's going to take place in September. So it's 1 month, 1 month earlier. Okay, so you have less time. The runway is shorter. Okay, so you can't cram in August. The runway is shorter. So I let you know, all of you are going to be affected. Your runway is actually shorter. Okay, so you know ahead of time. So you should start preparing. What do we do? Okay, we have all these different components which the teachers mark and which you get feedback on, right? And for IP students, we have challenging questions to stretch their ability. The underlying foundation, how to write logically, how to organize, all this is the same. Whether you use it to write uh, a situational writing piece for the O-level exam, or whether you use it to write your project presentation because you're an IP student. These are the foundational skills. You can't run away from it. You need to have spelling, grammar, thinking skills, vocabulary, and this is what we do. We teach in order to build a strong foundation. Okay, so there's presentation mastery with summary writing skills, and we give students homework boosters. So you have to develop your sense of responsibility to do the homework boosters by yourself and to check the answers for yourself. We have challenging comprehension questions just for IP students. The mainstream students, if they want to challenge themselves, they can. We have argumentative essay writing. We have listening comprehension skills. We have summary writing skills. So all of these things are relevant for IP students. They are relevant. The surface wrapper, the wrapping on top of the present might look different. But the thing at its very core, it's the same. So what should you do as a parent? So pay attention to the mark word which you receive from teachers, okay? So observe how much feedback they give to your child. Note the frequency of worksheets being given. How much homework are they given? How much exercise are they just being given one piece of work per every 3 months, and then in between you just go to the library and do research. That's not very helpful. So encourage the child to build up vocab, to write regularly, to work hard and practice, and to read. So don't say that you don't love reading. It's just a matter of not having found something interesting yet. So it doesn't matter what you want to read. Maybe you read about sports. Maybe you read about celebrities. Maybe you read about game reviews, sports articles, graphic novels. It doesn't matter as long as you start reading, right? Instead of looking at videos. So the videos are different because words, you need to translate that into the visuals in your mind. When you look at the video, there's no translation function. That particular aspect of your mental ability is not being exercised, it's not being developed. So ask the child questions about school, about the friends, so that they get a chance to express their opinions and to talk. build their confidence, know your child's weaknesses and confidence levels. So encourage them to keep a learning journal. So here's what I want to you to take away tonight. Your child has begun a different subject. It's called secondary English. It's not just harder primary school English. It's actually a different subject. They have about 650 days, okay, before this streaming exam that will shape their future, their options for years to come. So the foundation which they build now, it won't be visible until it's tested at the end of Sec 2, which means that by the time you see a problem, maybe at the end of Sec 1 or in the middle of Sec 2, it's too late. Okay. So don't miss the opportunity, don't miss the boat. There are things which you can do, practice, work hard, work consistently so that there is no super pressure at the end. You spread it out over time, it's manageable. You try to do a crash course at the end, that's stressful, isn't it? So practice, get feedback, improve. Practice, get feedback, improve every single week. So that's what we do at Mind Stretcher. And that's what the next 2 years are for. And that's why it's starting strong actually matters so that you have enough time so that everything is manageable. So come and attend our other webinars. We have pre-recorded homework booster videos for you to watch. Okay, so these core skills between IP or express students, they are the same core skills. So fully relevant. You understand? Okay, so thank you for attending this talk tonight. If you have any questions, please feel free to type into the chat and I'll hang around for a while. Otherwise, thank you. I hope to see you in other webinars. Good night. Bye-bye. We don't have compo books so it's not a matter of reading model compo books. It's not primary school. It's actually about developing a different way of thinking. Yeah. If the child has AL5, is it possible to catch up? Okay, what do you mean by catch up? Do you mean that to catch up until they are perfect in Sec 1? No. But I think that they can improve because if they have AL5 and then they don't get any help, then what happens? When they go to school, they might not understand what the teacher is saying or they misunderstand, right? So they need help. And when they get help, they have improved. They don't find that it's so frustrating. I used to be very terrible at Mandarin. In fact, I'm still quite terrible at Mandarin. I had tuition in Mandarin all my life. But because my tuition teachers were there to help me, I found that eventually I could still make it to the university. Because back then, if you don't pass Chinese, you can't get into uni. They had this rule. That was really stressful. So, what happens if your child doesn't read the newspapers? Okay, so we know that children don't read newspapers. So what we have done is that we have put newspapers into our worksheet. So we extract current affairs, we put it in. So topics about pollution, recycling, IT, chat GPT, and then we engage them in a discussion about these things in order to open up their minds. So if the child needs help, come for the class and then we will help them. That's what we are here for. We are here to help students at every level to improve. I'll say, yeah, reading current affairs is very important. We are going to run a literature poetry master class. So that is something which you should look out for. In terms of literature, for Sec 1 and Sec 2, we build that into our worksheets. We have a literary analysis worksheet like the one which I just showed you. We do that once every 5 weeks. Okay. And so we will teach them all the technique skills, how to quote, how to answer, all of these things we will teach them. Currently, most of our centers we have 15. Some centers we have up to 18, but I think most centers about 15 per class, 15 students per class. Normally yeah, so the classes get the spaces get filled up quite fast. So if you have any questions about like schedules and all, right? So you can just go to our website. All the schedules are there. Just click. Very easy to use. Okay, if you don't have any more questions, I'm still available. You can still ask me any questions if you want. Okay, if not, then thank you very much. I'll see you for other webinars. Good night.